This episode of the CMO Suite is brought to you by Uconnix. Uconnix provides digital solutions and teams to brand CMOs, VPs, and marketers looking for true transparency in the biddable media space. From paid social and PPC to complex platforms like The Trade Desk, brands from across the world have connected to Uconnix. Visit them today at uconnix.com. And No Kid Hungry. We're proud to promote No Kid Hungry and their many initiatives to help kids in need of meals. No Kid Hungry helps kids be kids, not be hungry. Visit them at nokidhungry.org. And finally, we're proud that Season 3 of the CMO Suite is presented by the CMOcouncil.org as their official marketers podcast. The Chief Marketing Officer Council is the only global network of executives specifically dedicated to high-level knowledge exchange, thought leadership, and personal relationship building among senior corporate marketing leaders and brand decision makers. The CMO Council's 15,000 plus members control more than $550 billion in aggregated annual marketing expenditures and run complex distributed marketing and sales operations worldwide. For more information on membership, visit thecmocouncil.org. Let's start the show.
You're in the CMO Suite, the podcast for marketers who want to be in the know, presented by Connectivity Holdings.
Hello and welcome to the CMO Suite. I'm your host, Sean Halter. The CMO Suite, as always, is brought to you by Connectivity Holdings. We are incredibly excited. We're in Los Angeles this week, and I'm excited to have my guest today. It's Joanna Popper. She's the global head of virtual reality for location-based entertainment at HP. How did I do on the title?
Pretty long title, but you did well.
It is a long
title. You got
title.
all the words.
You know, I think we've been trying to get you on. We come out, we do a West Coast swing of this every season now. And last year, I think we tried to see if we might be able to coordinate times. We weren't able to do that. I was really incredibly excited that we were able to do it this time. And I think, are you also speaking at an event tomorrow night?
Yeah, I'll be speaking at the CMOs, the LA CMO
the LA CMO Summit. I think
afternoon.
I'm out there as well, as is Scott Griffiths, who
Excellent.
was one of our guests last season on there. And I bring Scott up because his title was an interesting one for us to have on the show. Although the show is, predominantly marketing certainly focused, we target predominantly CMOs and VPs and C-level marketing executives. We also try to have a mix sometimes of just either guests that have traveled through that direction or guests who have made their way through and found a niche that we maybe never thought of or hadn't seen. And so Scott's was interesting last year because he's the CFO of marketing for farmers. And so you know that you're spending a lot of money when you have an actual just CFO just for marketing. And he's a pretty cool guy as well. I'm not sure if you've ever met him before or not, but if you haven't, you'll get a chance to do so tomorrow. So, so talk to me about just that title alone. I want to make sure we spend some time in how you ended up over at HP, but how do you end up with that title? Did they have somebody in that position before, or was this something kind of completely made?
Completely new role. Virtual reality is relatively new for most companies, relatively new at a mass scale.
Sure.
And so, HP, I'm sure you know the history, but for everybody out there, this is our 80th anniversary.
Congratulations. Did they throw a birthday party or anything? 80 years. Isn't
80 years, yeah.
That's crazy to think of the fact that there's a company that's 80 years old and they're leading the way in some ways in technology and virtual reality. That seems almost unfathomable that a company that old could also be that new, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what's really exciting about it. So the company was founded by two founders in Palo Alto in a garage, that original Silicon Valley founders in a garage creating technology.
That really happens.
Yeah, that really happened, and
yeah.
it still happens. So the two founders are in the garage. They were creating technology. They actually were working with Walt Disney himself to create technology for the movie Fantasia. So it's a really nice legacy of computing technology and media. And
was one named Hewlett and one was named Packard?
That is true.
I guessed that right. I did some research. At least I don't know if I did that much.
Yes,
wave your hand over there if I was close.
So since then, the company's been very focused on inventing and reinventing technology to continue to improve our lives. And so we see virtual reality, immersive computing, AI, data science, 3D printing, or digital manufacturing as the future of computing. And so for us, that we've been through all these previous computing waves. We're currently in the third wave of computing. We see these coming as the fourth wave, particularly the virtual reality and immersive computing area that I primarily focus on as that fourth wave. And therefore, it's very important for us to be setting the stage, building the foundation, and leading out what that next wave of computing will look like.
And you just called it the fourth wave. I don't know that I've heard that piece of it, but it certainly does feel that way. The days, again, of people thinking that virtual reality is coming, they're here. Now it's here. My kids play it. It's
Excellent.
crazy. One of their friends had one of the systems in our house the other day, and we're all waving our arms and climbing things and doing Beat Saber. And it's pretty it's pretty nuts, to just kind of realize that it's not coming soon. It's right here. It's here right now, and you're right in the thick of it.
Absolutely.
And you're really leading the way. I mean, you're a huge. I feel like, at least the parts that I see, you're huge in the social media space to some extent, which probably lends itself certainly to the category. But you're at every event that seems to fit in the space, and you're really certainly, obviously, as the title speaks to, you're there really leading the way to help consumers know what's coming now, and I'm assuming what's coming in the future.
Yes, yes. We're still relatively early. Still building that foundation, and we have a lot of great products already in the market, and many more coming that we're really really excited about to continue to grow the market and impact the market.
And you're based out of here, Los Angeles, but you travel, I'm assuming, quite a bit as well.
I do. I would say I travel probably about half the time. My scope is global, so we're working very very closely with our teams and our partners in China and Korea and Japan, Australia, the Middle East, in all across Europe, and of course all across the U.S.
And so when you're doing that traveling, whether it's here in the U.S. or it's overseas, how is that interaction? How is the interaction, again, in a completely foreign country? Do you bring a team with you? Do you have a team that's there to help you, just guide you along the way?
HP is an
Sure,
extensive company,
yep.
so we have offices in pretty much everywhere. We have local teams on the ground that are know our local markets really well, and so we're working very closely with those local teams and our local partners.
And when you're there, has there been a country that you've been to that you were either surprised by, or you just thought, wow, I had no idea that's what this country was?
Well, I've been to about 70 countries. Many of my previous jobs I had either global scope
as well, yeah.
or Latin American focused, or different markets focused. What's really fun and exciting about working in virtual reality is seeing how it's different in different markets, and then seeing where there's globalization
Yeah.
across markets. So you go to China, for example, and they have these what looks to us kind of like a phone, a traditional phone booth of the past,
Yep.
where a superhero would go and change into their superhero outfit, and they go into those and they do karaoke. And in some of them, they also go in and play VR, or they have they've turned cinemas into VR cinemas, and so you have chair after chair after chair of a person engaging in a VR film. And then in other places you have the Beat Saber, the game that you just talked about. That's a game that's taken the world by storm, and you see it in cabinets, in arcades, people playing it in Dubai. You see that in Korea.
How did you know that was the game I was talking about? Just because
you said we were the moves. Well,
Yeah.
I know we're on camera,
Yeah,
but for those
sure,
of us
yeah.
who were just listening to
Yeah.
audio, you moved your hands in a certain way, which is the symbol,
was my-
the
that was
international
my-
symbol of Beat Saber.
my clear tell that we were playing Beat Saber.
Yeah, we know the moves. So
You knew the international symbol for it.
Yes.
So it sounds like, again, some areas are more immersed in it, and they've completely created it as part of the fabric almost of all their entertainment, and others are just kind of on the cusp of that. Where do you feel like the U.S. is from that standpoint versus maybe some of the other countries globally?
Well, the U.S., we have amazing content creators here, and there's really 4 groups that we primarily work with on the entertainment side. So those would be Hollywood studios, location-based entertainment operators, in many cases, small startup content creators, and then VFX houses. And so the U.S. does, has leadership in many of those areas. And what's really interesting is when we see, companies from, say, here in LA that are, simultaneously expanding into Dubai and into Korea and into Japan, but then we also see companies from Japan and Korea and Hong Kong coming in and into the LA market. And so it's a really interesting time of globalization, and seeing which content resonates in which areas, and what types of venues and facilities and types of VR is resonating in different areas.
The entertainment industry is a flattening of the world in many ways. No matter what's happening politically, no matter which side of that you're on, one or the other, it is often a way for us to all see the world through the same lens to some extent. And to your point, obviously Los Angeles is in many cases certainly a leader for that. here, and you spent some time kind of in the entertainment industry. Am I correct?
Yes, I was at NBC Universal and Telemundo for about 8.5, 9 years.
And so, what were you doing when you were at both of those places? If you don't mind us going backwards for just a little bit.
Sure. I was leading consumer marketing for Telemundo, which was a great, really fun job.
Are you from the U.S. originally?
I am. I was born in Chicago.
Were you?
Yes.
Wait, it's funny when you said Telemundo that it came out extremely, a beautiful Spanish accent.
I speak Spanish
to
and
it.
Portuguese, but
It came out right out as if you were there. So you grew up in Chicago?
Well,
Is that what you said?
I was born in Chicago. I grew
Okay.
up mainly on the East Coast, in D.C. and New Jersey.
What brought you here to Los Angeles?
I've lived a lot of places, and I actually lived in Miami for most of my adult life.
Okay.
I've lived in Chile. I've lived in Brazil. I was in Miami. I was at NBC Universal, as I said, and then I moved out to the Bay Area. I worked at a tech company up there, leading media and marketing for Singularity University. Fell in love with VR along the way, but some of my time at NBCU, some of my time at Singularity, and then started working in VR and moved down here.
Family still in Miami, or do you have family, even though you've moved around quite a bit? Where's your family
Mostly
based?
East Coast.
And so do you get back much here and there, or obviously wherever you can, because obviously clearly you travel,
Well, I'll be in
you travel quite a bit.
I'll be in IAPA, which is a big amusement expo
Yes.
conference in the next week or two, which is fantastic. It has everything from cotton candy vendors to huge roller coasters
Yeah.
to a ton of virtual reality.
IAPA is probably one of the coolest trade. I mean, it's a trade show, really.
It's a trade show,
at the end of the day, it's one of the coolest trade shows I've ever been to. When I was much younger, and I worked for Nickelodeon back in the day. I lived in Orlando, and we used to work at a bunch of the trade shows.
Oh,
So
great.
when they would come to Orlando, they'd say, "Okay, we need booth people, or we need you to ride these things."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I went to IAPA, and they had really, gosh, even some virtual reality stuff even back then. But the roller coaster technology and all that stuff was so cool to be able to see what's already here, but then also stuff that really is like 5 years ahead of even really being able to kind of come out. So that must be it's great. It's been many years since I've been, but that's interesting that you threw that one out, because that is a really, really, really cool trade show. And so when you go to IAPA, are you there partly to speak on behalf of HP? Are you there to also see what others are doing in the space? Is it a mix for you when you're out at an event like that?
Yeah, I mean, most of the conferences, and we spend a lot of time at conferences and meeting, a lot of our partners and our customers are at all these different conferences, and it's really interesting because in VR we get to be at that intersection of I'll be at IAPA, for example. We're at all the tech conferences, we're at the film festivals, we're at.
You get to pick all the cool events because you guys seem to overlap little bits of almost everything.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, VR is the future of computing, and so and it's not just entertainment. We actually focus on 5 different sectors. We focus on across higher ed, healthcare, entertainment, architecture, engineering, construction, and product dev and training, which cuts across many sectors. And so, there's very strong use case for virtual reality, augmented reality across all of those different sectors. And so, within that, there's different partners that we work with, and different places for us to connect with our partners, find the partners, demonstrate, learn about the market, continue to push the market forward, demonstrate what we're doing, speak and advocate for the industry publicly and on behalf of HP. So we're doing a combination of all of that at all of these events.
And although it's obviously wrapped clearly around computing and technology and gaming to some extent, there's huge brand implications or opportunities when it comes to VR. I would imagine, whether that is allowing a consumer to have an in-store experience in a way that they never really could have before. But what are some other ways that you feel like are going to be at the forefront for marketers to be thinking of ways to really allow kind of this fourth area to be able to kind of immerse their brand in front of consumers?
Sure. So there's so many ways that this is being used right now. So there's brand extensions, kind of like an experiential marketing event. We partnered with DreamWorks, NBC Universal, Walmart, Intel, a company called Positron, on a really big activation earlier this year for the How to Train Your Dragons installment, the third installment, and it was a tour that started here actually in Burbank, where we are today, at the Walmart in the parking lot, and it was a pop up in the parking lot where you would come. We had esports gaming computers set up. There were actors from Dragons to greet you. There was a very long line of people to come in. You would, after the actors greeted you, after you waited in the long line and played the video games, you would enter the tent and go into a virtual reality experience on these red positron chairs using the HP headsets, and we had our HP backpacks powering the chairs, and you had the experience of flying, with it on the dragon and touching the dragon and interacting with the dragon. And then after you were done, you exited through the gift shop, where they had all the Dragons merch. And so each of the partners that was involved, for Dragons, it was about, for DreamWorks, and for the Dragons franchise, it was about bringing people inside the franchise and bringing people inside the experience and giving them that experience of being part of the movie, of flying on the dragon and touching the dragon, interacting with the heroes. For Walmart, it was about lifting the merchandise sales, and their numbers were astounding. The numbers that they got from that exit through the gift shop tent out in the parking lot. For HP and for Intel, it was about having our technology associated with such a great property, and having all those consumers engage with our virtual reality technology. And so we've worked on projects like that where you're promoting some sort of content, bringing audiences inside the content. We've worked with NBC Universal on also on Skyscraper, the movie. We worked with Sony on their Spider-Man activation. And so you have real marketing. Real marketing experiential events using virtual reality. Then you have other experiences where they're location-based entertainment venues like Dave and Buster's, like Chibit Circus, like Spaces, Dreamscape, Zero Latency. There's Nomadic. Those are some of the ones that we work with here in the U.S. And then they also have international franchises. And then Surreal in China, VR Arcade in the Netherlands, Park Playground in Belgium, where they're often taking known IP, not always, but often taking known IP and creating that into something that is an exciting experience for audiences, but they're developing the ROI from that. It's not just a marketing extension.
Having come up through marketing, and remind me, how did you end up here?
Well, I've had a varied career history, so I started in Wall Street, actually. I started in Wall Street in my first job and was focused on Latin America. Had the opportunity to go and live in Brazil for a year, which was amazing. And while I was doing that job, what I realized was I most was excited about, when we were doing an M&A deal, was understanding the strategy. So I went off to business school, had the opportunity to work at McKinsey in the summer, and then go back there full time. And while I was at McKinsey, working with these brilliant partners and C-level executives at all of the big companies, the types of projects I was most drawn to were always marketing projects. And so I have there's a consulting or business school, 80-20 theory. I have this theory in career, when you start thinking about maybe it's time to move on, find that 20% of your career you like the most and make it 80% in your next job.
Switch it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's not just switch it, but you're growing it, so it's like, what is the part you love the best, and make that a bigger part of your job. Where that you love the best, that you're the best at, where you add the most value, and you continue.
So it doesn't
learning.
mean you have to start completely from scratch. You take the part that you loved and figure out how to water it and grow it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so from there, I went on to a marketing role, and that was the beginning of my first marketing role. And NBC, then moved on to NBC Universal, where I really loved the media product, love working in a company that has hands in across studios, film, parks, cable, broadcast, really a little bit of everything.
What were you doing when you were there?
That's when I was leading consumer marketing at Telemundo. And, the two things that were most exciting to me and most inspiring to me were, one, the creation of content, and the stories we were telling, and the impact you have on people by telling stories and creating that connection for people around these universal stories. And then on the other side, the way that marketing had shifted so dynamically. I started at NBCU in 2007 and was there until 2015. And so during that time was a time of tremendous change.
Oh, yeah.
So the way that we marketed our products shifted dramatically. The way we distributed our products shifted dramatically. And the way our audiences engaged with our products shifted dramatically. So, when I walked in, we were doing Yahoo banner ads, and that was like our digital
That was
strategy.
exciting strategy.
And that,
Yeah.
and so I was there at a time and got to, oversee what we did around, our first SEO, SEM, first Facebook, first
Everything.
influencer, just a lot of different changes that happened during that time period. Our first VOD marketing, our first, OTT. And so while some of it, certainly sitting here today in 2019 doesn't sound new and exciting, at the time, it was groundbreaking, even licensing merchandise and some of the work we were doing in that market. And so I was very interested and intrigued by that constant pace of change and the dynamic movement forward, and understanding where is the consumer, how do you find them, how do you give them that right message at the right time using that right vehicle. And I had an opportunity to move to Silicon Valley and work at Singularity University, leading out media and marketing. And I was excited about that opportunity because I had, the idea that it would bring me, to
a roundingness to some extent, or just something different.
Well, really, what I thought was, here I am, we're working in the midst of all this change. I want to go to the go to that mecca of
Sure.
a lot where a lot of this change is coming out of, for technology in Silicon Valley, and understand from these visionaries, where are we going with AI, where are we going with VR, AR, digital biology, cryptocurrency. And so, I had that experience there. I led out on media and marketing. It was a great learning experience. Did a television show deal for us along the way. It was, really interesting and amazing learning to be around people like Ray Kurzweil, some of these huge visionaries and geniuses. And then, had been exposed to VR earlier, but, what I realized was one of the things I was most passionate about, and why I spent so much time working in television, was that storytelling aspect and that that connection to story, and realized that for me, VR and immersive computing was going to be that next great intersection between content creation, innovation, storytelling, and
Puts
those
it all together.
new technologies and new platforms. And so had the opportunity to start advising some companies, start speaking, particularly in the marketing field, to CMOs and senior marketers about what VR will mean for you in the future. And then HP found me, and
Built
this
the title.
job, this job came along, and it's been an amazing journey. And there's so much more to come. We just scratched the surface on some ways that marketers may use VR. There's marketing now really comprises, there's customer facing side, there's product development side, there's customer journey. There's so many ways that virtual reality fits into all of that. Tomorrow when I'll be speaking in the panel, I'll also be talking about how VR is being used in product development and in product of in architecture, engineering, construction, pipeline process, and how we're now able to use VR to create efficiencies and to create much more efficient product life, design life cycles. And so when you think all the automotive companies are using VR in some way to make that much more productive and much more efficient. So that's another area where VR is touching marketing. There's automotive is also using it in the showroom floors, like really anywhere.
Anything that's immersive.
Yeah, well, anything that in a way, it's where are you driving revenues? Where are you looking to decrease costs? Where are you looking for product efficiencies? Where are you looking to increase product satisfaction? And truthfully, that's much of what we do in business. And VR and immersive computing can have ways of positively impacting all of those pipelines.
Speaking of positive impacting, who has given you advice that you feel like really has positively impacted your journey? Because obviously you've really navigated your way through a pretty interesting space. You've almost again self-created a position at one of the largest companies in the world. So who helped you along the way?
Wow, there's so many great mentors that from previous bosses to coaches, informal mentoring. My last boss used to. She had a lot of funny isms. When one was lead follow, get out of the way. So it's a good thing to remember when you're trying to figure out what your right role is in a company, how you can have the most positive impact, and where you're going to really put your mark and for positive impact. And so, and then in the VR space, one thing that is really close to my heart and really important is that it this is a time and this is a moment where we have so many representative voices, so many voices and points of view, and that were maybe not as included in the table in past waves of computing, that are now at the table in terms of product development, in terms of engineering, in terms of content creation, in terms of creating systems and voices for belonging. And that, there's just amazing women working across the industry as CEOs, as content creators, as engineers, who are so inspiring every day. And so I'm just so happy to get to work with all of them, with women, with underrepresented voices, and everyone in the industry that is supporting and creating a much bigger table for all the voices to come forth.
We often ask, and I'll be interested to hear your answer to this, what do you wish you knew more about? You certainly seem to be at the forefront of almost everything that seems to be happening in the marketing space. You've always managed to tip, it sounds like, a little forward ahead. So what do you wish you knew more about?
Well, we're all learning every day, right? Especially in such a new space. There's always, these, large companies like mine, tiny companies with 5 PhDs, and, similarly in a garage as maybe our founders, continuing to move the industry forward. But where I think there's a lot of really interesting intersections that I'll be leaning into further and working on more in the future, around artificial intelligence, data science, edge compute, and as these all merge and converge with what we're doing in VR, I'll be working a lot more deeply in all of those areas as well.
Well, I feel like I understand most of what you said in this half hour. It went pretty fast, didn't it? We appreciate you coming out to see us, Joanna Popper. I'm going to ask you kind of one final question as we wrap up. Again, we greatly appreciate you talking to us about this technology. My last question to you really would be this. If you're a CMO or a VP of marketing, you're somebody who's in the space, you want to understand, obviously, how content is evolving everything that's happening out there. It certainly seems like the strategy wrapped around content is a critical piece for most marketers to start really getting a deeper understanding of how do they go about getting a better understanding other than listening to shows like this or following you along the way and seeing the things that you're doing. How do they get started? How can they kind of cut their teeth in understanding where virtual reality can impact their brand or even, their career path itself?
It's a good question. There's the conference we're going to tomorrow is, a great place to get started.
Which will have already been, and had drinks and had dinner by the time we air this, but yes.
Okay.
So going to good just events
going
themselves,
to good events, following people who are leading in the field. There's, coming to some of the different tech events. There's a lot of There's some great podcasts that go deep in VR, like Kent Bye's Voices of VR, if you want to really understand what's going on.
Deeper than you? Oh my gosh! All right.
Ken is one of the best. Malia Probst has a great one as well. And then there's a lot of great trade publications that are very. Some of them are very insider baseball, but and I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. I get lots of people reaching out all the time, looking to learn more about the industry. So always happy to chat with people and see how we can help support the industry growing, and how HP with our great VR products, our new headset, our new VR backpack. I don't know if you had a chance to try it yet, but it's a great one. And everything we have across our product portfolio can be of service to help them grow their business through virtual reality.
Well, listen, we've had a lot of guests on, and a lot of guests who know certainly a lot about the brands that they represent, but you have infused this HP into the fabric of all of the parts of your conversation, which again just shows how much passion you have for both the product, the passion that you have for the industry, and we are incredibly glad that you were able to make it on to the show itself. So thank you again,
for the
Joanna Popper.
Invitation.
Thank you very
enjoyed
much.
It.
If you can, take us out of the show.
Thanks for hanging out in the CMO Suite, the podcast for marketers who want to be in the know, presented by Connectivity Holdings.
You're a C-level manager. You shouldn't have to know the difference between behavioral or contextual targeting, but your agency should. Uconnect provides brands and biddable teams direct access to platforms like The Trade Desk, Google, Amazon, Facebook, OTT, and more. Their US-based traders can train your in-house team or provide complete transparency with no minimums and CPM-based service pricing for true transparency. Something Mighty Hive, The Trade Desk, and Centro simply don't offer. Tired of being the smartest one in the room? Reach out to Uconnect today for a free demo. Uconnect, the world's leader in true transparent biddable media.